This is Amend and Progress, your go-to podcast from Vidori for all things promotional material review. Get ready for actionable insights, valuable perspectives, and best practices to elevate your workflow and team morale.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Amend and Progress, Vidori's podcast about the material review process. I'm your host, Annalise, and today we're going to be talking about lots of compliance topics, including the evolution of the compliance landscape, managing relationships and expectations with industry vendors, and even some lessons learned about risk management. Joining me in the conversation today is Chris Corallo, Deputy Chief Compliance Officer at Convatec. Chris, welcome to the show. Delighted to have you here this morning.
Annalise, thanks for having me. This is obviously exciting. It's always great to talk to you and other members of the compliance community. And I'm just looking forward to get this rolling.
Amazing. Could you please just spend 30 seconds to a minute, however long you'd like, just doing a brief introduction of you and maybe a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I've been in the compliance, arena for a little over 20 plus years. And I think it's a very interesting environment, to say the least. Where the industry has come to where we are now. It's an evolving it's an evolving discussion that doesn't change. It doesn't matter what area of compliance you're in, whether it's transparency or investigations or whatever the case may be. But over my career, it's really been an interesting journey because I think the perception about compliance has also changed. But I know we're going to get into those topics. But as far as me, I think I'm a compliance journeyman. I started off, with different consulting organizations, different law firms, different small to mid-sized to large pharma and device companies. So I've had a unique opportunity to get a sample of all those different disciplines, which help, I think, shape my approach to compliance.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I'm so excited to tap into all that amazing background, and you just have incredible knowledge in this area. So excited to get into the conversation today. But as you know, we start with some 3 hopefully easy getting to know you questions just to kick off the conversation today. Are you up for it?
Yes, shoot.
Okay, wonderful. Let's start. My first question, it's the morning. What is your morning beverage of choice?
Now you're going to think this is really horrible, but it's just water. I'm not a coffee drinker. I don't, maybe occasionally orange juice, or maybe even a little milk with my pancakes. But I mean, it's really very flexible based on how I'm feeling that day. But it's boring.
Not boring, important. There's so much, research out there about the importance of getting lots of water in the morning. So I think you're actually the smartest one out of all of us in that you're not drowning yourself in coffee first thing in the morning. So love to hear. That's the first time I've heard that. So love to hear a unique answer on that one. Second question is either what is your current or favorite hobby?
So I love sports, but my recent passion is driving my Harley motorcycle. I
Love
enjoy
it.
it. I enjoy it a lot. I joined a group over the last year or so. I just enjoy, just driving that freedom, the wind blowing in your hair or, whatever you want to call it. But it just, the freedom, the flexibility, the rush. I'm not a speed junkie, but it just, it's a unique experience beyond driving in a car. I
Hmm.
enjoy it.
Absolutely. The wind in your hair. I love it. I mean, just to get another way to get outside, right? It's just
Right.
another avenue for it. Love to hear it. Okay, final question. What's one productivity hack or best practice you use in your daily life?
So, and I was thinking about this with another discussion I had with a colleague the other day, and I think sometimes we all are like Milton from Office Space. We're grinding all day long. We're either on our calls or at our desk, just going through everything we have to do in our jobs and responsibilities, and we lose sight of breathing. Right? You have to step away from your computer because we're locked to it at times many hours of the day, and you have to get up, go outside if you can, just take a little walk, just breathe the air, get exposure to sunlight, some vitamin D, Uh, Otherwise, you can really burn out easily and quickly. And if you don't take that time, whether it's going outside, taking a half hour to go to the gym or just walk, you need some other stimulation to help you mentally get through the day beyond, the other physical tasks you might be responsible in doing.
I love it. It's such an important reminder that the outdoors is a tool for us all to leverage in that day to day. And there's all these things, the creativity or just the way their mind opens when you get outside is so much different than just sitting on Zoom all day. So an incredible reminder. All right, let's get into compliance. So like I said, so much I think to cover. And you talked a little bit in your intro about sort of compliance is ever changing, right? It's this landscape that's evolving and changing all the time. I'm curious to hear from you, to sort of set the stage for the conversation today. How would you define or characterize today's compliance landscape? What does this look like today?
So I think today, I think it's really tech focused. In the past, you know, there was binders of books and procedures and policies and everything else. And now everything's at your fingertips. You can search, different settlements, you can search different best practices, PowerPoint presentations, policies. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's all at your fingertips. But I think also the government has a higher level of expectation on companies with the management of their compliance programs. And there's more of a focus on, you know, risk management through systems. How are you pulling all your information to identify risk? And I think every company has a different uh, capability based on their size and their focus and their business model. And it's not a one size fits all. So, there's some manual process, there's some system process, and now with the emergence of AI, it's even more complex because it's not as simple as, hey, we'll just use GPT for everything or other similar platforms. It's, what's the risk of confidentiality, privacy, proprietary information? Is it an open or closed system? How are you training your algorithms to make it beneficial for your internal and or external stakeholders? So I think the data and the systems piece to compliance today is really a complex, challenging, and exciting environment.
Overall, would you say that the inclusion or maybe the emphasis on tech in today's compliance environment is that going well? Are there challenges? I imagine there's pros and cons, right, to sort of technology. You spoke about the AI piece, that potentially being a complexity or a challenge. Talk to me just about technology and compliance and sort of where you see things going really well, or maybe where there are some challenges or bottlenecks.
Well, I think with data, the old rule applies, garbage in, garbage out. So, if you don't have a good process, if you don't have good stakeholders managing the data, then, it's not going to be worthwhile, and it's not going to help you with your risk management. Uh, I mean, I think as systems and processes evolve, there may be some greater efficiencies that we'll see, but at the end of the day, the human component will never change. There's got to be someone thinking about, well, how do we want to map this data or these workflows or these risk profiles? And then how does that translate with the systems? And then with anything, you can have the best system in the world, but then you have to have someone reviewing it and then actioning those results and those queries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine that plays into the size of the organization as well, right? And the size of your teams and sort of where those roles and responsibilities fall. So that makes total sense. Talk to me a little bit more about the AI piece if you're open to it. You spoke a little bit about the opportunities and complexities there. Where do sort of like you stand on the AI topic as it relates to your day to day? And do you see this as like a path of opportunity, or do you see it as a complex path given all of the nuances and details we know go into compliance?
Well, I think it's it's an opportunity to make things more efficient. I'll give an example. So every company, has their own intranet sites, and they have many different functions within those intranet sites. And at times it could be unwieldy for employees to navigate all these different things. So with a AI component and having, I'll just see a chatbot or something where you ask a question and it's going to help direct the employee or stakeholder to the right areas instead of hunting and gathering all over the place. And maybe the information is correct, maybe it isn't, and that's the efficiency, right? But the complexity is developing the algorithms for, okay, well, this is the type of question that's being asked. Is the answer and the profile of that support going to really work? And that's where the rubber hits the road. It's building the algorithms, building the questions and answers, as well as the support behind it. And I think that's where the journey is on really developing, the questions and answers, the support. And there's so many different branch logic that you have to think about that it takes time. And we're on, the real early stages of that journey. And, we're developing really a strategic plan for AI and other related systems, but we're by no means ahead of the curve. We're like everybody else. We're just evaluating and seeing how it could best be served within our business.
That makes total sense. And clearly there are lots of nooks and crannies there that you have to consider and take into account for your strategy and all of those pieces. So thanks for speaking to that. I also want to ask you a little bit more about the government agency relationship. So obviously, government's highly involved in compliance and the compliance landscape. This may be a stupid question because I don't really know, but what is that relationship like between life science organizations and the government agency? Is it the organization's responsibility to be on top of the new rules and regulations? Is there any sort of dialogue that happens with the government agency? What does this relationship look like today?
Well, I think all companies, whether pharma or device, we have our own responsibility to do our own due diligence on, what rules of the road exist, whether they're laws, they're guidance, training, whatever the case may be. And when we're unclear or the guidance is gray, then companies have that option to reach out and ask for clarification and comment and so forth. And that's always a delicate dance because, you always think about, well, if I raise my hand, now am I on the radar? And I think that's a real life, consideration by any company. And then also similarly, if, we know that a competitor is engaging in certain practices that is not common to what we do, and we ask, do we ask the question, and is this model appropriate? Is it, potentially bringing on any anti-kickback or other type of risk or anti-bribery risk? So it really becomes a self-evaluation first, and then what are the risks? What are the benefits? What are the cons? And then, the company makes a decision on how they want to engage. But we all know that the government, through their own means, is looking at the industry at large, and they have that opportunity through like open payments in the US and other transparency considerations around the globe. So, the data is out there. It really depends on, what the focus of the government is at the time and what the needs of the business are for the company that you're working with, and how you can leverage, the insights of those different regulatory agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. Let's maybe move into some industry vendor topics. So, what's the relationship like today between industry vendors and compliance programs, whether, no matter if it's at a pharma or device company, how do you think organizations should think about vendors and how they fit into individual compliance programs?
Well, I think, it's been a real evolution of vendors over the last 20 years. I mean, when we started in this game, there was only a few vendors that kind of cornered the market, and with technology, with service offerings, with consulting support. And now we see so many of them popping up all over the place. So now I think from a company standpoint, selfishly, we want to look at, all right, well, what platform do you have? How flexible is it? But even more important than that, it's the support that the vendor provides.
Hmm.
And last but not least, it's the cost. But for me, I think it's the support aspect, because we're coming to you, vendor, right, as a subject matter expert in not only your platform, but how that platform is leveraged across the industry that that company is specifically working in. And we really look for a consultative relationship, not a I can't tell you this, or I'm going to charge you for every, piece of input that I'm giving you. We want it to be a collaborative relationship. Obviously we don't want everything for free, but we want your expertise, especially because you're engaged with so many other companies leveraging your products and services. So you're getting the benefit of not only lessons learned, but different scenarios that may leverage the platform that you're providing from a vendor standpoint.
Do you think that's been one of maybe the elements that's changed in the last few years of this? You're not just providing a software or platform to us, we actually also want to tap into consultation support. Do you feel like that's been a pivot that you've seen within the industry, or has that always been the case, but maybe more emphasis is being placed on it today?
I think the consultative piece may have always been there, but at a premium cost,
Mm,
versus it just being freely provided, because as a vendor, I want you to be successful. I want your program to succeed. And I think most importantly for the vendor, I want to continue that relationship, not as a one-off. I want to be a critical component of your, not only your compliance, but maybe other functions within your organization. So it
mhm.
becomes, I want to have a partnership, not a PO and an invoice to be paid, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah, partnership versus transaction
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, Chris, one thing that you've said it's sort of been baked into some of your responses is, this compliance maybe responsibility to assess all sides of a problem. You're looking at the pros and cons, the risks and rewards. Is there a certain type of person that is, or a certain type of mindset that's helpful as for those that are working in compliance? It seems like you would need certain characteristics to help you sort of like look at things from all different angles. I'm just curious, of the type of people that you think are best suited for compliance roles given that nuance of the job or the day to day.
No, it's a great question. Uh, I think, when I first started in compliance, it was in a way, we were the police, right? It's
Sure.
we're looking for the gotcha moment. We were part of the sales prevention department, but I believe that expectation has changed over the years, where you really need to be a partner and a solutions provider. For some things, it's black and white. You can't bribe a doctor, right? But if there's a program where we want to engage healthcare professionals to help in some capacity, that's bona fide. There's an appropriate rationale and justification. Great. So you have to have that mindset where you need to listen to the business scenario, right? Then you have to apply the applicable company policies or procedures, external laws, codes, whatever the case may be, and then say, okay, you know what? Sounds good. Or I think we need to add this additional criteria or do this other thing to make it more stable and defensible. Where and I think you really need that openness and understanding to really succeed in compliance. Because if you're just going to say no to everything, then you're not going to be able to, publish or distribute or implement programs and processes that's relevant to compliance, because you need champions. You need champions in every aspect of the business, not just sales, but in regulatory, HR, quality, and all the other different functions that help support one another. So this person needs to be open-minded, hands down.
Mm-hmm. We've heard, the maybe stereotypical sort of police type characteristic of compliance, and that is changing, right? How do you think organizations, or like, what are some best practices or things that organizations can do to ensure that compliance is seen as more of a partner than an adversary in some ways, for lack of a better word? What are some things that bolster that partnership?
Well, I think we all have speak up campaigns in every company, right? That just kind of talks about, spreading the word, leveraging your compliance team if you have questions or concerns. But I think it has to go beyond that, and it has to go beyond your, learning management system training every year. I think you need to be part of the leadership in your different company, different divisions, right? Because you will need a seat at the table to help drive the story, and be supportive. And the one thing I'm gonna pat myself on the back for once and say that, when I meet with the business, I don't just have my compliance hat on. I'm a customer of whatever we're selling or whatever we're engaging in. And I think about it as, hey, how is this affecting me as an individual? How am I perceiving this message? And how would my mother, father, brother, friends also perceive that message? And if it doesn't seem clear, then I'm going to speak up about it. I think we all get accustomed to being in these silos of compliance, legal, regulatory, or whatever the case may be, and we're afraid of stepping out of those lanes. Or some people just, hey, look, I'm only looking at it for this, and everyone else has to, figure it out. That's not what a company is about. Like whatever the company you're working for, you're all doing things to help the greater good of the company and the customers that you're supporting, with respect to your products and services. So listen, it's a journey, and I think it needs to be very collaborative, to say the
Yeah,
least.
super important reminders, I think, all around, and uniting under that concept of the greater good, I think is a incredible reminder, no matter the day. Well, so the last thing I want to tap your brain on, you have a wealth of experience in this area. What would you say are some of your key lessons learned about risk management, the compliance landscape? Like, what would you tell your younger self about some of these key lessons you've learned throughout your career?
Well, before I get into that, I guess I'll say, every company has a different size and shape. And, some companies, they have a lot of resources and a lot of people to dissect a lot of different areas. Whereas smaller companies, they have a small team and they have to be very tactical at, what they're going to address. So I think, it's hard, depending upon where you are in your compliance journey, it's not a one size fits all, but I do think you have to be strategic. You have to look at, what does your business do, and then do ramp assessments, risk assessments to assess, well, where is the risk? And then you have to score it. What are the most priority items that I have to adjust first to mitigate risk for the company? And then you go down that list, and then get to it as you can, and as more resources come and more people get on board, then you can further deploy resources to address those different areas. But I do think you have to be methodical in what you're looking at, and you have to be very prescriptive in what the recommendations are, because you can make 1,000 recommendations, but once those recommendations are included in some type of report or discussion, then there's an expectation that you have to action those recommendations. And that's the challenge, I think. monitoring, auditing, investigations, and the like, it's a really important component, not only to listen to what the issues are, but to have a plan on how to address them. And I think
Mm.
that's a real key area for any compliance professional.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I think that's a perfect way to end the conversation. What a great sort of words of wisdom to leave our audience with today. Thank you so much for your time and just your perspective today. I really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks for coming on.
I appreciate being here, and hopefully it's been beneficial for those who listen.
Absolutely. And folks, the conversation doesn't stop here. Follow Vidori on LinkedIn for updates on new episodes, ask us questions. We'd love to hear your feedback on any of the episodes to date. You can subscribe to Amend and Progress on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, this is Annalise signing off for Amend and Progress. Have a fantastic day.